Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to a new season of the New Age Tour Guide podcast. If this is your first encounter with me, I'm Trish Murray, and this podcast is really about sharing content and creative ways of navigating these age-changing times. And that becomes a threshold for some listeners. Are you seeing or feeling the cultural, social, economic, political landscapes shifting? If you aren't sure how to make sense of what's happening in our world right now, season 1 might be of benefit to you. I draw on a variety of viewpoints with the intention of broadening our perspective and creating a different level of awareness around what's transpiring in the outside world, the external circumstances of our life on planet Earth. I draw from astrology and psychology, and I even tune into some of the most compelling ideas that I've found that have been pointing to the possibility that humanity is moving through a really significant turning point. But in season 2, I'm going to bring you into new thresholds. I'm going to use a specific framework developed by Dr. David Hawkins, the map of consciousness. And I'm going to combine that with examples and insights and stories from my own Eat, Pray, Love journey, and share a little bit about how I think we can shift and anchor new levels of consciousness and find our way to truly thrive in this new age. Now, moving with the spirit of this new age of authenticity, let me say that I'm not a coach and I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. I don't profess to have all or any of the answers. I'm not using this podcast, or my Substack channel for that matter, to monetize products or services or to sell programs or courses. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things. You will probably have the best experience, though, if you engage with what I share from an understanding that this space is a place where I'm fostering my own creative expression. It's a space that I've dedicated for myself to share ideas and theories that I'm working with, inspirations and insights that I'm gathering from a wide array of directions, and where I'm testing what it is to live as a sovereign soul. In season 2, I created a series of conversations that are really designed to be perennial in nature. And what I mean by that is that it's my hope that they will be enduring. They will be timeless in some sense, and that they will be relevant for people at multiple points through this collective evolution that we're engaged with right now. Season 2 focuses primarily on the pure power of intentionally raising our consciousness. And I speak candidly about key influences that I've found that are blocking or derailing our progress. Influences like the media, the marketing, and high-profile messengers, which I describe as the Matrix. Throughout season 2, I also share examples from my own journey in the last, say, 10 or 15 years about how these influences really showed up for me. Like how I went from being completely triggered by President Trump to cycling through the entire map of consciousness in one night after almost losing my niece's dog this summer. Each season has 9 episodes, and at this point, I plan to do 3 seasons. The first 5 minutes of each episode is video so that you can see who you're listening to and maybe give yourself a little bit of confidence that you're not tuning into something that's been AI generated. You're not. You're not. But then I intentionally shift gears and move into a pure audio podcast because the one thing that I have found to be absolutely true above all else when it comes to shifting consciousness is that we intentionally need to tune out the distractions in order to tune in order to listen for what we need to hear today. we need to be able to create some space so that we can shift our minds and prepare our hearts and listen and reconnect with our soul's voice of wisdom so that we can find truth and wisdom in the directional insights that have the most meaning for us. So let's dive in to a tour of David Hawkins' Map of Consciousness. I did something different this season than any other podcast that I've done before. Even season 1 of this particular podcast. I decided I was going to write and record all of them at one time. A window of opportunity presented itself for me while I was house and garden sitting this year in between other projects, and I've really felt mostly ready to tackle all 9 episodes at one time. Now, over the last 5 years, one of my morning rituals has been to take my coffee outside and wake up with nature. Sometimes it's before the birds are awake, and sometimes it's to the sound of someone's lawnmower or chainsaw or children screaming, depending on where I am in the country. I also started to immerse myself in somewhat of a nomadic lifestyle. For the last 4 years, I have been experiencing nature in a variety of spaces and places, depending on where the kaleidoscope of work projects take me. This morning coffee ritual has been non-negotiable for me since the shit show started in 2020. I think it's because how I personally experienced 2020 up until now has been characterized by things so unnatural that I was unconsciously starting to anchor myself back into a world that makes sense according to spiritual and natural laws. This morning ritual has shown me clearly that nature has consistent principles, processes, and rhythms. And that has helped me to feel and operate more consistently within them. So as I soak up nature from the very beginning of my day, before I'm really even awake and ready to operate, reconnecting with a world that is as certain and reliable and steady as anything that we will find on the planet, I have learned to accept a myriad of things in these age-changing times, which have been anything but certain, reliable, or steady. My physical and my intuitive senses are sharper, and they are more reliable, even in the midst of chaos that has definitively challenged my usual reliability. And I come back to a sense of steadiness after events or people knock me off my center. So where I'm staying as I'm recording this grouping of episodes, I've met a woman who has recently lost her husband. She's the neighbor of the people that I'm house sitting for, and her loss was very recent, within days of me arriving. I learned only surface details before the homeowners departed, but after 5 years of battling every kind of cancer you can imagine, her husband was finally told that there was nothing the medical community could do for him. He'd been through every treatment there was, and some more than once. He had soldiered on and soldiered through, and she stood quietly by as he lived with the fallout of the treatments and the illnesses, and as he died from them. We haven't talked much. Sometimes our paths cross while I'm out watering the gardens or mowing the lawn, and sometimes she is hard at work as I come out and do my wake up routine and wake up with the trees. There was a time, though, for me when holding space for someone or being present as they talked about a loss, a grief, or a trauma was super uncomfortable for me. I think it was because I hadn't processed and learned to hold and heal my own. But if the last 5 years on the planet have done anything specifically for me personally, it's been to expand my capacity to accept things that I cannot change. Not necessarily the circumstances or the situations, which in a number of cases are completely unacceptable, but accept the people caught up in the circumstances or the situations. The people who are operating at emotional frequencies lower than 200, at grief, guilt, shame, fear, apathy, anger, pride, or desire. Accept the people, and even more so, the behaviors that people exhibit when these unacceptable situations, events, circumstances trigger them. Trigger them, and at times trigger me. I've studied a lot of theory and got a lot of head knowledge around psychology, but I'm not a psychologist. I've studied and practiced and taught a therapeutic form of yoga for close to 10 years now, but I am not a therapist. My friend Adele is a grief and trauma counselor. She's taught me a few strategies that help me sit and be present with people who are moving through the cycles of grief and who have encountered various forms of trauma. But I'm not a coach, nor am I a counselor. Adele has actually reminded me at times that holding space for someone in these places, in their journey, doesn't require a degree or any specialized training. It simply requires that we accept them wherever they are on their path. In these brief moments, these brief interactions with my house sit neighbor, I've been practicing the art of accepting where she is in her journey. Sometimes she wants to talk, not about her husband exactly, but about how frustrated she was that morning doing paperwork. So frustrated that she ended up having to bring herself outside and work on reassembling a perfectly good rock wall. So let's start with defining acceptance as I've been doing. It means to abide with someone or something, to be patient, to wait, to remain stable or fixed, to continue, to endure without protest or reaction, to receive or take hold of. Our brief encounters have left me with a clear sense that underneath the surface level of acceptance that her husband's death was a mercy is the expected sorrow and grief, the loss of her longtime companion and maybe partner in crime, so to speak. But there's also anger. Yeah, there's a lot going on here because one thing I know from personal experience is that death is a complex topic and even more complex an experience to navigate. My intention isn't to tell her stories, tell tales, break unspoken confidences, or betray any part of her journey. I'm simply using this woman's current reality to say that this raising consciousness business is going to bring us to edges that we're not going to be comfortable with. And probably at times, we're going to be pissed off. We're going to be looking for and need to hold space, both for ourselves and for other people, and maybe even find others who can hold ours. Quite likely, there will be at least a few nights where we're up before the birds, wrestling with something And feeling like moving perfectly acceptable stones is the only way to let go of the anger energy. In the past 5 years, starting somewhere around, oh, I don't know, say March of 2020, I've watched people across the planet lose their minds, and more specifically, lose control of their minds. And I've watched as the matrix activated or triggered behaviors clearly driven by fear, guilt, shame, pride, anger, apathy, grief, and desire. There have been moments for me personally where I didn't so much lose my mind as I did find it, but I did lose my shit. I reached a boiling point more than once where my anger at the fuckery, advanced fuckery, and super advanced fuckery that the Matrix was unleashing on the collective caused me to lose my shit. Like, completely. In the process of my own awakening, I've been red pilled so hard at times. Like when I went down the Michael Jackson rabbit hole in the smear campaign that surrounded him, that all I could do was scrub the linoleum off my kitchen floors for 3 days. Now, I like to think that to the outside world, I held it together pretty good. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter any more than it matters whether my current neighbor is expressing in small, subtle ways that she's angry at her now deceased husband for leaving the paperwork in shambles, or the rock wall in a state of mostly perfection, or that he hoarded so much stuff in his workshop that now she's the one left hauling it out, sorting, and finding somewhere to get rid of it. Shit, even if he was still alive, that would be enough to piss me off. When I did share what I was finding and getting frustrated and angry about, I was fortunate that one of my sisters was rabbit hole jumping along with me. I had at least one person to hold space for me, and I for her. And there were most certainly times that I posted on social media. I mean, isn't that what it's for now? What I shared, and people have confirmed this, was from a spirit of reason. Come on, friends, let's think this through. If 2 plus 2 has always equaled 4, then experimental still means experimental, and I don't know why you're believing people who say it tallies to 5. Nonetheless, I stepped outside the approved narrative far enough that I landed in Facebook jail, and to date, my only account on Facebook is still inaccessible to me. Like some of you, I lost connection with people that I thought were friends for speaking reasonably in a time of madness. Sure, I felt like I had been training for this for 5 or 6 years as I burned the sacred cows of marketing and forced myself to broaden my perspective on Trump, which I touched on in episode 1 of this season. Trump was easily in the top 3 most profound red pills of my awakening journey. But that's 3 out of millions that have and still do require me to do the real work of forgiveness. Forgiveness towards myself, towards others in my immediate circle, towards God, Source, Spirit, the divine, toward the nefarious ones, the entities and the people I don't and will likely never know, but who are pulling the strings backstage. The forgiveness isn't for them. It isn't with the purpose of reconciliation or letting bygones be bygones, and it sure as hell isn't done with the mind of continuing to allow the fuckery to continue. Forgiveness is for freedom, for me. The forgiveness is so that I can live from the frequency of acceptance and as a sovereign soul. When I started to really look at the map of consciousness, I was not just a little bit pissed to see that acceptance was defined by a predominant emotional state of forgiveness. It's characterized by holding a perspective on God, Source, Spirit, the Divine, that they are merciful. And it emerges through the process of transcendence. Now, for me, all of these were great, but my end game was and is consistently holding a view on life that reflects harmony. I want to be in harmony with those spiritual and natural laws because spirit and nature is harmonious. I practice forgiveness because I want to hold the frequency of acceptance, because then I can hold space for people who need to be accepted. I don't want to be hung up on what was, neither do I want to forget the unacceptable things that have transpired in the past 5 years or so. No, I want to remember, but I want to remember without the emotional volatility that results in me losing my shit. And there's a very powerful reason for this, which I'm undecided on whether or not I'm going to talk about here or wait until next season. For now, if you are thinking in terms of frequency, vibration, and energy, what does it cost us when we invest our vital energy into things that ultimately pull us back down to the lower emotional frequencies? As I considered my endgame of harmony and the sometimes overwhelming idea of how to forgive the unforgivable, it brought me back to a specific statement made by the Christian figure of Jesus after he had been stoned and whipped, after he had dragged a cross uphill for miles, after he had been hoisted up onto that cross, nailed to it, and left to die. You know what he said? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they're doing. That's mercy. Mercy for those who did not fully understand the gravity of their actions. Why didn't they fully understand the gravity of their actions? Because their minds were trapped in the emotional frequencies lower than 200. They had not stepped into the frequency of courage and were pretty much consistently operating from a baseline frequency of pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, or shame. And what I discovered as I was considering the life example of this spiritual figure was there was absolutely nothing I could do to break the spell. He couldn't break the spell that kept people in his time mind blind. And by all accounts, he was the perfect reflection of divinity and humanity harmonized. If he couldn't break the spell in his time, there was zero chance that I was going to be able to break it in mine. At least not en masse, and not without a different level of consciousness. In episode 3, I shared a story about working with the woke coach when I was trying to unpack the mysteries of spiritual law, manifestation, and intention setting. One highlight of this experience was a retreat in Concord, Massachusetts. Just outside Boston, this little community is best known as the birthplace of the American Revolution, where the New World landed immigrants went to war against Britain and spearheaded American independence from the crown. Just as I feel there is a powerful energy coursing through the continent of Africa, which I talked about in a previous episode, after spending only 6 weeks there, I know that there is a powerful energy moving through the area of Concord, Massachusetts. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of what I experienced there, but suffice it to say, if you're curious about this frequency, vibration, energy stuff, a visit to Concord and affording yourself some time to be in that area would be a worthwhile investment if you're inclined to do a little bit of fucking around to find stuff out. Concord, Massachusetts was where two of the greatest writers who ever lived, in my opinion, did some of their greatest writing. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. Beyond the American Revolution, some also assert that Concord was where the New Thought movement emerged. Now, I haven't researched that enough to confirm or deny, but Emerson and Thoreau each had a foot in the New Thought community that rose up in this area, and a lot of their ideas really reflect the same ideas of something a lot of people refer to as transcendentalism. Emerson moved to Concord to write, so they say. I think he moved there to heal his broken heart after his wife died. Thoreau moved to Concord to find Emerson and spent a profound amount of time in nature, which I think is so beautifully ironic because one of the books that Emerson wrote in Concord was a piece he titled Nature. And it was the piece that led me to believe that he moved to Concord and he wrote there in order to heal his broken heart. I've found that writing is a beautiful way to heal our broken hearts. So is painting, sculpting, knitting, woodwalking, baking, and pretty much any other activity that we engage with for the pure love of doing it versus the things that we do out of duty and obligation or to make money. Thoreau was a surveyor by trade, and his work took him outdoors a lot. He became an expert in the area on the nature of Concord, Massachusetts, the trees, the plants, the topography. He built a small cabin on Walden Pond where he lived for a few years. And I mean small. There was room for a narrow twin bed, a writing desk, and a small stove. And the cast iron figure of Thoreau outside his rebuilt cabin shows why it could be so small. I towered over this guy. Yes, I'm almost 6 feet tall, but this guy was tiny. He didn't need much space, and he was completely wired to spend a lot of time outside, which means he probably only came indoors to sleep and to write his observations down. Concord, Massachusetts is also one, if not the spot in America that many people believe transcendentalism took root. Transcendentalism connected back to this New Thought movement. Now, if you're not familiar with any of this, transcendentalism holds a core belief that there is an inherent goodness of people and nature, which you can really pick up when you read Emerson's writing. Transcendentalism sees society and many, if not most, of its institutions as having corrupted the purity of the individual. Transcendentalists believe, among many other things, that people are at their best when they are truly self-reliant and independent, which is what I think was at the heart of Thoreau's Walden Pond experiment. In a nutshell, transcendentalists see the divine nature in the everyday experience. This tracks completely with how Emerson and Thoreau viewed the world, at least as I've gleaned from their writing, and why I think David Hawkins' research found that transcendence is the process that leads us to acceptance. By this reasoning, is it fair to say that Jesus was a transcendentalist? Was he the master and founder of the movement itself? I don't know. But he was a master at forgiveness. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they're doing. I think Jesus knew that the society and many of the institutions of his day were corrupting the inherent nature of people, as evidenced by those hoisting him up on a cross and holding the hammer and nails. In the last 5 years, I've watched the enormous influence that the institutions, systems, and structures have had on the minds and spirits of the people, and how over time, many of those institutions, systems, and structures have eroded our sense of self-reliance and independence to the point where we know not what we're doing. And if you see it, you probably can't unsee it. The one and only thing that has helped me hold the frequency of acceptance and not default back to apathy is that I've come to accept that this is a part of our soul's path. The insights that I gathered from psychology were helpful, but it was really human design, astrology, and numerology that concreted for me that absolutely every single event, person, situation, circumstance that we encounter in our lives has been designed for maximum soul growth. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail. If we fail but stay engaged in the process, we get to try again. But the universe is merciful. If we don't want to engage in the process of soul growth, it invites, but it does not force. When I've run people's charts for them and shared some of the core themes and the driving insights behind, whatever area they want to focus on, I see the path that they're walking and a very rough outline of where their soul is leading them to and how they can get there. If I do an adequate job of communicating in those conversations, they see it too. But it's up to them to continue to see it, to continue to want to see it, to create a greater degree of harmony for themselves and their path with those themes and insights. For me, these tools have activated a greater degree of harmony, yes, and self-reliance and independence. They show me and support me in becoming a more sovereign soul. The events of the last 5 years were without question designed to create maximum soul growth for a massive number of people. To move us from the lower frequencies into courage, neutrality, willingness, and acceptance. The last 5 years has really been about getting us to that breakthrough frequency of courage so that we can keep moving towards reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. The barrier in acceptance is forgiveness. Forgiving without forgetting. The benefit is harmony, harmonizing, because we have been healing. The beauty is mercy. Mercy makes space. And at times it holds space for those who are finding their way through shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride to the breakthrough frequency of courage. Mercy accepts that some won't make this journey out of the lower frequencies. Mercy accepts that some souls will opt out before they complete their soul's curriculum. Mercy accepts that our work, the real work, is to stay present, to stay engaged, and to stay focused on shifting our souls to the next level and aim for love and above. Mercy accepts that, as my beautiful friend Ali Mack shared in a previous Soul Talk about the map of consciousness, we will find ourselves back in the frequencies of anger and guilt and fear and so on, because it's a part of the human experience. My house sit neighbor is in one of those experiences where it's completely reasonable that she will be feeling angry at times, sad and grief at times, guilty at times, afraid at times, because her whole world has just turned upside down. And I know some might say that she had time to prepare over the last 5 years of her husband's illnesses, but there is no way to prepare. The only way around the complex emotional frequencies is through. Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode in a series of conversations exploring how we can harness the power of consciousness to navigate these age-changing times. If you found a few insights that resonated for you, I'd appreciate it if you shared it with someone in your corner of the world. And don't forget to subscribe in order to share a comment with your thoughts, experiences, or ideas that have been sparked. This Substack space is dedicated to fostering my own creative expression, so you won't hear calls to action, sponsored messages, or promotions. But if you want to learn more about me and how I'm realigning my work to thrive in this new age, you can find a link to my website below. Until next time, I'm Trish Murray, offering Sovereign Souls a guided tour of key elements driving the creation of this new age.